His doctor gave him a death sentence wrapped in well-meaning advice. At 75 years old, he decided to turn it into a finish line. His name is Samuel Jones, and for most of his life, his greatest physical exertion was walking from his desk to the coffee machine. He was an accountant, a man of numbers and spreadsheets, of quiet order and predictable routines. His life was measured not in miles, but in fiscal quarters. As the years passed, his body began to keep its own unforgiving ledger. Stairs became mountains. A walk around the block left him breathless. His favorite armchair bore a deep groove, a testament to a life spent sitting, watching, waiting. The nightstand beside his bed was a symphony of pill bottles, a colorful collection of managed decline. He wasn't sick, not really. He was just getting old, a slow, silent surrender to the gravity of his years. The wake-up call didn't come as a gentle reminder. It came as a clenched fist in his chest, a sudden, dull ache that radiated down his left arm, a cold sweat, the sterile white walls of a hospital room. The diagnosis was clear, delivered by a kind, competent cardiologist half his age: congestive heart failure. His heart was weak, inefficient, tired. The doctor's advice was just as clear. "Sam," he said, his voice full of professional compassion, "we need to manage this. Avoid any strenuous activity, no heavy lifting, no stress. You need to take it easy." Take it easy. The phrase echoed in Sam's mind as he sat back in his favorite armchair, a new prescription added to the collection on his nightstand. Take it easy. It sounded like give up. It sounded like wait for the end. He looked around the quiet room, at the television remote, at the comfortable groove in his chair, and he saw not a home, but a cage. A comfortable, well-managed cage where he was supposed to spend the rest of his days, slowly fading away. That night, he looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. He didn't see Samuel Jones, the accountant, the husband, the father. He saw a ghost, a pale, tired man with fear in his eyes. And in that moment, a flicker of something he hadn't felt in decades ignited within him: defiance. The next morning, he didn't reach for the television remote. He went to the back of his closet and dug out a pair of old, dusty sneakers he hadn't worn in years. He laced them up, his fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar task. He walked out his front door, not to get the mail, but to do the one thing his body and his doctor had told him he couldn't. He was going for a run. He only made it to the end of his driveway. His lungs burned. His legs felt like lead. Every part of his body screamed in protest. He stood there, bent over, gasping for air, the world spinning around him. A failure. But as he looked back at his front door, at the cage he had just left, he realized it wasn't a failure. It was a start. It was the first step in a race against his own mortality. The first few weeks were a brutal education in humility. Every morning, before the sun rose, Sam would wage war against his own body. The end of the driveway became the end of the block. The end of the block became the corner. Each new landmark was a hard-won victory. The pain was a constant companion, a searing fire in his lungs, a sharp protest from joints that have been dormant for decades. He was a spectacle in his quiet suburban neighborhood, the old man shuffling along at a pace barely faster than walking, his face a mask of pained determination. But Sam, the accountant, approached this new challenge with the same methodical discipline he had once applied to a balance sheet. He bought a calendar and a red marker. He charted his progress not in dollars, but in feet, then yards, then miles. 1 mile. It took him
nearly a month to run a single mile without stopping. He celebrated that victory, not with a party, but by laying out his running clothes for the next morning. The discipline was his anchor. He started reading, devouring books on physiology, on nutrition, on running techniques for older athletes. He learned about heart rate zones, about proper form, about the sacred importance of rest days. He joined a local running club, showing up at the track feeling like a relic among rockets. He was surrounded by lean, young runners who spoke a different language, a language of PRs and split times. He was met with a few curious stares, but mostly with a quiet, respectful encouragement. It was there he met Mike, a wiry, 78-year-old Vietnam veteran who ran with a quiet, relentless rhythm. Mike saw past the shuffling gait and the pained expression. He saw the fire. "You're not just running from something, Sam," Mike told him one day after a tough training session. "You need to be running towards something. You need a goal so big it scares you." A few weeks later, Mike handed him a flyer. The City Marathon, 26.2 miles. Sam laughed. It was the first time Mike had heard him laugh. It was an absurd, impossible idea. A marathon was for elite athletes, for the young and the invincible. It wasn't for a 75-year-old man with a weak heart. But the seed had been planted. The idea, as insane as it was, took root in his mind. It became his North Star. The training became his life. His days were now structured around his runs, his meals, his recovery. The seasons changed. He ran through the biting cold of winter mornings, his breath pluming in the dark. He ran through the oppressive heat of the summer, sweat stinging his eyes. He ran in the rain, a solitary figure pushing against the elements. The man who once found stairs daunting was now running 10 miles, then 15, then 20. His body transformed. He lost weight. The tired pallor in his skin was replaced by a healthy, weathered glow. The checkups with his cardiologist became a source of bewilderment for the young doctor. Sam's blood pressure was down. His resting heart rate was that of a man 30 years younger. His heart, though still damaged, was growing stronger. "I don't understand it, Sam," the doctor admitted, looking at the charts. "Clinically, this shouldn't be happening. You should be slowing down." Sam just smiled. "I feel more alive than I have in 20 years, Doc. I'm not slowing down. I'm just getting started."
Race day arrived with a chill in the pre-dawn air. Sam stood in the starting corral, a sea of thousands of runners vibrating with nervous energy. He was an island of gray in a sea of vibrant youth. He felt the old fear, the old doubt creep in. What was he doing here? This was a fool's errand. But then the starting gun fired, a single, sharp crack that cut through the noise, and the great river of humanity began to move. And Sam, the accountant, the heart patient, the 75-year-old warrior, moved with it. The first 10 miles were a celebration. Fueled by adrenaline and the roar of the crowd, he found a steady, comfortable rhythm. He wasn't racing against anyone. He was just running his own race. The miles from 10 to 20 were a long, lonely meditation. The crowds thinned. The initial excitement wore off, replaced by the monotonous reality of putting one foot in front of the other, over and over again. This was the grind. This was the discipline. At mile 22, he hit the wall, and he hit it hard. It wasn't a gradual fatigue. It was a sudden, catastrophic failure. His legs turned to concrete. A wave of nausea washed over him. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to stop. The voice of the doctor echoed in his head. "Take it easy." The image of his comfortable armchair flashed in his mind. He slowed to a walk, defeated. He was done. And then he thought of the man in the mirror, the pale, frightened ghost he had seen a year ago. He thought of the promise he had made to that man. He wasn't just running a race. He was running for his life. He clenched his fists, let out a raw, guttural yell, and forced his legs to move again. It wasn't running anymore. It was a painful, clumsy shuffle, but it was forward. The last 4 miles were not a race against the clock. They were a battle against the abyss. He ran on pure will, on memory, on defiance. Then he saw it. A distant, inflatable arch. The finish line. He could hear the roar of the crowd, a sound that seemed to pull him forward. He saw his family, his wife and children, their faces a mix of terror and awe. He saw Mike, the old veteran, pumping his fist in the air. He fixed his eyes on that line and did not look away. The last 100 yards his vision blurred with tears and sweat. He broke the tape not with his body, but with his will. He stumbled across the line and collapsed into the arms of his son. A finisher. A marathoner. The official time on the clock was irrelevant. He had won. The story of the 75-year-old heart patient who finished the marathon became a local legend. He was on the news. He was in the paper. He became a symbol, an inspiration. But for Sam, the real victory was quieter. It was the victory he won every single morning, when he chose his running shoes over his armchair. It was the realization that the diagnosis wasn't a death sentence. It was a starting pistol. Today, Sam still runs. Not as fast, not as far. But every morning he still laces up his shoes and steps out the door. A warrior greeting the dawn, forever running toward life. Sam's race wasn't against the clock or other runners. It was against the belief that his story was over. What race are you running in your own life? The one that truly matters? We would be honored to read your story in the comments below. To discover more legends who are redefining what's possible, consider joining our community by subscribing.